October is in full swing, and if you're a nerd like me, you love to theme your spooky season viewing. Last year, with the release of Hocus Pocus 2 and my own reimagining of Haxan Witchcraft Through the Ages, it was all about the season of the witch. This year, I'm diving into the depths of folk horror, starting with a brilliant primer on the genre, Woodlands, Dark and Days Bewitched, a history of folk horror. Horror documentaries are my go-to in Halloween Town, and this one hit the spot. If you've never heard of this documentary or seen the trailer, well, how about we watch it together? Do a little trailer reaction. One of my favorite things.
Folk horror is based upon the juxtaposition of the prosaic and the uncanny.
It's strange things found in fields, lights flickering in dark woods, the darkness in children's play, being lost in ancient landscapes.
The devil having a cup of tea with you.
The power of ritual and the power of collective storytelling.
Ancient wisdoms, if you like, that have been long repressed and forgotten, rise up again, very often to the consternation of complacent modern man.
It's a way of accessing all those layers of meaning that build up in a landscape, that build up in a culture, and that often build up unofficially.
It's a sort of illegitimate culture that has sustained just through sheer force of will of the people, the folk.
Folk horror ultimately asks, what if the old ways were right?
And what if the old ways were right? I've always loved The Wicker Man. 1973 version, except no substitutes. It was my first folk horror film and an instant favorite, but the director's cut sealed this into my psyche as a profoundly moving work of art and social commentary, especially for an ex-evangelical turned witch like me. So imagine my delight when Woodlands, Dark and Days Bewitched confirmed The Wicker Man as one of the founding films in British folk horror. The documentary also introduced me to the idea that folk horror's roots run deep into the British countryside, with a trifecta of films shaping the first 3 must-see movies in my marathon lineup. Witchfinder General, 1968, Blood on Satan's Claw, 1971, and of course, The Wicker Man. Some might say the documentary is too extensive. I saw that in some of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, but overall, the tomato meter really liked this documentary. I liked the 3-hour and a chunk of change duration. I found it relaxing to watch over the course of a few days, like a series. It was the perfect way to map out my spooky season viewing, and I looked forward to it as a highlight of my September evenings. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be watching it tonight again while I put up Halloween decorations. It was also interesting to see some of the YouTube comments on the trailer complaining that this documentary was too quote-unquote woke or liberal at some points. I roll. In my view, horror has more often than not had some undercurrent of social commentary. For instance, Night of the Living Dead's black protagonist, and the real monsters of the film being ignorant, gun-toting humans and human mobs more than zombies. Furthermore, with folk horror often drawing upon fear of witches, primarily women, puritanical religions, fear of nature, and the bloodthirsty, sex-depraved cravings of repressed societies. These issues weren't SJW talking points. They were the reality of a brutal life. Horror would lose its pulse without social, cultural, and sometimes political examination at its heart. So the sections in the documentary that covered these themes, as well as horror tropes like haunted Native American burial grounds, were both appropriate and worth exploring. However, the film did leave me wanting more about folk horror's influence on the more modern cinema and movies. They mentioned Midsommar, as they should have, and of course The Witch and Hereditary. But where was the Blair Witch Project? In my book, that film is a brilliant example of meta folk horror, and honestly still one of the scariest films I have ever seen in the theater. Maybe the documentary focused too much on the past and not enough on the present, which feels like a missed opportunity. I would love to extensively explore the more modern resurgence of folk horror in a follow-up documentary. So Severin Films, hint, hint, let's do part 2. And if it's 3 hours plus long, I am not going to complain. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the beautiful interstitial artwork and haunting music. Both were absolute standouts that made the documentary even more atmospheric. My witchy little heart beats a bit faster watching the resurgence of folk horror, especially after The Witch widely reawakened the genre. This documentary was a great way to celebrate that. I have plenty of films to share with you this fall and winter. I've literally made a cinematic bucket list, so stay tuned for more reviews, recommendations, and witchy vibes as we wander further into the dark forests of folk horror together. So tell me, have you seen this documentary? If you did, what did you think of it? If you haven't seen it yet, do you want to now that you've seen my video? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Also, what are some of your favorite folk horror movies? Give me some suggestions in the comments below. Or if you don't want to comment, drop me a black heart emoji, or a tree emoji, or a spider web, or a skull, or a ghost. Just drop me a favorite emoji in the comments. Let me know you were here, and feed that algorithm. Starting brand new channels is hard. Heck, having channels that are 5 years old is difficult too. Let me know what you think. And until next time, stay spooky, stay magical, and thanks for watching.